Today, we're jumping into a wild moment in history, a time when an entire city rose up and kicked out its king in less time than it takes to binge watch a season of your favorite show. Yep, we're talking about the 1830 July Revolution in France.
So how on earth is that even possible? How does a powerful monarch with an entire army lose his throne in just 72 hours? Well, it turns out it's a perfect storm of an unpopular leader, one final decision that goes way too far, and a city that's just had enough. Let's break it all down.
So, on one side, you've got King Charles X. This guy was trying to turn back the clock and rule like a king from the old days, with absolute total power. But on the other side, you have the people of France, especially the growing middle class, business owners, doctors, lawyers, and they wanted more freedom and a real say in how their country was run. This whole situation was like a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. And that spark, it came on July 25th, in the form of something called the July Ordinances. Now, these weren't just some minor tweaks to the law. Oh no, this was a full-on attack on the rights people had been fighting for. Charles X signed them, thinking it would shut down his opposition for good. He was very, very wrong. Just look at what these new rules did. First, he completely muzzled the press, so no more newspapers criticizing the king. Second, he shut down the newly elected parliament before it could even meet for the first time. And the third blow? He changed the voting laws so that only the absolute wealthiest people in the country could vote. For pretty much everyone else, their voice in government was just gone overnight. So did the people of Paris just shrug and accept it? Not a chance. They fought back. And that brings us to the main event. 3 days of intense fighting that became known as the Three Glorious Days. Things escalated so fast, it's almost hard to believe. Day 1, July 27th, started with protests in the streets. But by day 2, the entire city was a war zone. And by day 3, the revolutionaries had taken over key government buildings, like the Louvre Palace. The king's army was either retreating or, in some cases, even switching sides to join the fight. So how did they do it? How did regular citizens take on a professional army? Well, they used the city itself as a weapon. People tore up paving stones from the streets, dragged their own furniture out of their homes, and flipped over wagons to build these massive roadblocks called barricades. These turned the narrow, winding streets of Old Paris into a total maze, giving the revolutionaries a huge home field advantage. And this wasn't just one small group of angry people, it was everybody. We're talking students, factory workers, shopkeepers, and even some old soldiers who had once fought for Napoleon. Everyone was completely fed up, and they all fought together, side by side, to take back their city. Now, the king, who had been staying safely outside of Paris this whole time, finally realized he lost. He tried to take back the ordinances, but it was way too little, way too late. The people didn't want to compromise anymore. They wanted him gone. And so on August 2nd, he officially gave up the throne and fled to Great Britain. Just like that, it was over. With Charles X gone, France needed a new leader. But they were pretty wary of getting another king who thought he was above the law. So, who do you pick? They ended up choosing the king's cousin, a guy named Louis Philippe. But his whole vibe was completely different. He was called the Citizen King because he tried to act like a regular guy. He wore a normal suit instead of fancy royal robes, and he was famous for just walking around Paris carrying an umbrella. The message he was sending was crystal clear. Hey, I'm one of you. And it wasn't just an act. The entire system of government actually changed. France became what's known as a constitutional monarchy. All that means is that, yeah, there's still a king, but he has to obey the laws in the country's constitution. The law is now more powerful than the king. This chart really shows you how much changed and how fast. Under the new rules, press censorship was gone. More people from the middle class could vote. The country no longer had an official state religion. And a huge symbolic change. The famous red, white, and blue tricolor flag came back, replacing the old white flag of the monarchy. So it sounds like a total win for the people, right? Freedom for all, problem solved. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. You have to ask the question, did everyone who fought on the barricades actually benefit from this new government? If you look at where the power actually went, there was one clear winner: the middle class. Or as they're often called, the bourgeoisie. These were the bankers, the factory owners, the lawyers. The new government was pretty much tailor-made to protect their interests and help them get wealthier.
But what about the working class people? The ones who did most of the actual fighting and dying in the streets. Well, they were largely left behind. They still couldn't vote, their wages stayed low, and their living conditions were still terrible. This created a lot of resentment that would eventually boil over again.
Now, this story doesn't just end in Paris. The news of a successful revolution against a major European king spread like wildfire. It had a massive impact all across the continent.
It was like a chain reaction. People saw what happened in France and got inspired. Belgium launched its own revolution and won its independence from the Netherlands. Poland rose up against the massive Russian Empire. All over Europe, people started demanding more rights, and the old, powerful monarchies were suddenly very, very nervous.
So what was the final outcome in France? Well, this new July monarchy, with the citizen king, lasted for 18 years. But because it really only benefited the wealthy, those frustrations from the working class just kept building and building until another revolution exploded in 1848. And that one finally ended the monarchy in France for good. So that leaves us with one last thing to think about. The goal in 1830 was to create a different kind of king, one who is more in tune with the people. But it raises a much bigger question, doesn't it? Can a system that's built on inherited power ever really be equal? Can a king ever truly be just another citizen? That's a question France would continue to struggle with for a long, long time.